The boy on your screen is the 17-year-old Aditya Samant. He's India's latest Grandmaster, 83rd GM, and he takes on the world number 1 Magnus Carlsen, who is fresh from playing golf on the rest day. You can see Magnus looking sharp, drinks some water, and he has the black pieces. And this is the tricky part. Magnus with white in this tournament has been pretty solid, but with black he has struggled. He lost to Alisher, drew to Pranesh, and now faces Aditya, who opens the game with 1 e4. Aditya, very strong player, very solid, has a rating of 25-11. And for Magnus, it's been a tournament where he's faced so many young Indian talents: Srihari, Pranesh, Almutaya. Knight comes out to f3. Bharat Subramaniam as well. Let's see what is in store in this game. Magnus comes back, and now most likely knight c6. The trick here for Magnus is to choose an opening where he's not risking too much, but at the same time he cannot go for a line that is too dull, drawish or theoretical. Bishop b5, a6, and now Aditya will play the most uncompromising line. That's how he plays his openings. He plays the main lines, bishop a4, and the knight comes out to f6. One can say Magnus is one of the biggest exponents of the Ruy Lopez, especially from the black side. He has played it a lot. Short castle here, and now the main move, of course the main line is bishop e7, which leads to the closed Ruy Lopez. There's also b5, bishop b3, and knight takes e4. He goes b5, and now he plays bishop b3. Now, the reason why knight takes e4 and going into open Ruy Lopez doesn't make sense, and the reason why Magnus goes bishop e7 is because he might not prepare so much in this tournament, as he has said in his previous interviews. And these youngsters are very well prepared. So Magnus is choosing lines where he can try and outwit his opponent with his understanding, and that's why he goes for the closed Ruy Lopez. Castles here. And now, of course, if you go d4 directly, bishop g4 is one of the main lines, and so makes sense to stop that idea with h3. And now white has the plan of playing d4. Let's see what Magnus goes for. There are many lines, but he goes for the Breyer. Now, the Breyer's idea is that you undevelop your knight and you bring it to d7. So d4 played right in the center, and you bring it to the d7 square to control the e5 pawn. Knight comes to d2, and then so that your bishop can work nicely and your c pawn can be freed up. Bishop goes back to c2. This is all well-known opening theory, has been played in thousands of games before. And now Magnus plays rook e8, and you will see this little dance happening, that knight jumps here. So there are 2 attackers and 2 defenders. And when the bishop moves back, now you will see the threat is to introduce a 3rd attacker. And so Aditya will also bring in the 3rd defender, which is knight to g3. And white has nicely placed all his pieces. Black, on the other hand, plays g6 to put his bishop on this nice diagonal, which could be important. Aditya strikes with a4. And now the main move here is c5. But Magnus goes for knight b6, a line he has played 3 times before. b3 by Aditya now transposes into a game that Magnus and Hikaru had at the Speed Chess Championship, where also Magnus took on a4, and I think white will recapture here. Takes, and now black will push his pawn to a5, gaining back some space. Also putting this bishop on this diagonal could become possible, and Hikaru had gone bishop d3 here. Now you will see that Aditya at this point has 1 hour 25 minutes, while Magnus has 1 hour 16 minutes. So Aditya is well prepared, but for this move he comes down to 53 minutes, which means he took 33 minutes already on the clock here. Too much of thought. Bishop g7, and now a good move is bishop b3, trying to aim at this square on f7. But once again, Aditya thinks for 23 minutes, comes down to 30 on the clock and takes on e5. It's maybe not the best move because now black has equalized, and perhaps the way to continue is bishop e3 and the position is equal. But you can see there Aditya is not very confident with his time utilization. He takes on d8, and this is his plan, that if you take rook e d8, maybe he wants to snatch the pawn on e5. And so Magnus now takes a think, because he wants to win this game. He takes with the a rook, and now I think Aditya's main point was rook b5. As he makes his move quickly, he's double attacking both these pawns, and Magnus plays this beautiful move knight d7, asking Aditya to win the a5 pawn, not the e5 pawn, because after rook takes on a5, yes, white is a pawn up, but Magnus's next move, which he's seen already, rook a8, is going to get him back this a4 pawn with his knight, and then the c3 pawn would be weak. So rook takes rook, rook takes rook, attacking the a4 pawn, and now knight takes c3, the knight jumps here, the bishop can move to c6, the other bishop can come here, and it feels somehow that black's position is more harmonious in general. But that being said, white is within the drawing margins, and Aditya should be able to hold this. Of course, you don't want to play pawn to c4 because it weakens so many squares and also allows the rook to enter. So clearly you don't want to save this pawn. Rook b1 is the move that Aditya chooses. You can't take because your bishop is hanging. So bishop c6 seems very logical, and exactly he plays his bishop to c6, defending the knight, also just moving the bishop to a good square. Rook b4 played. Now with this move, Aditya is putting pressure on the a4 knight, and knight a b6 was the best, but Magnus goes bishop f8, and here was Aditya's chance to take, because if you take the rook, bishop is hanging, and if you take here, rook b7, and white has traded a piece, but he goes bishop, rook c4, knight c5, and you will notice that this rook is now suddenly a little awkwardly placed. If given a chance, the rook will enter here in this position, and black's advantage is actually rising. So Aditya has to be very careful on how he plays. He's got his rook in a precarious situation. He's also down to just 1 minute on the clock. Magnus has 59 minutes. So bishop takes knight, he takes it, and now Magnus can take it with the knight, which seems like an idea, but he takes with the bishop, and bishop takes c5 means that now Aditya has a small tactical option. Yes, knight e5, what a move, because if you take here, rook takes c5 and white is winning. So Magnus now goes and chops off bishop takes f2, king takes on f2, and the e5 knight can be picked up. And so he takes, knight takes on e5, and you will see that in this position Magnus has a lot of time, but the position is now simplified quite a lot. Rook c5 played by Aditya, the rook is living dangerously there. f6, nice move. The nice thing is that the knight cannot be kicked away, knight defends the bishop, and your plan is to bring the king and kill the rook. Bishop b3, and now king f8, e7 to d6 is the plan. Yes, he plays it, and what is Aditya going to do? He brings his king up to e3, and he's playing really well in time pressure. With 1 minute on the clock, he's making several moves, and he's making it very difficult for Magnus to play for a win. Rook a7 makes sense, because if you had gone king e7, there was bishop d5, which is the best move. But with rook a7, knight e2, fantastically rerouting the knight to the d4 square, because king d6 is going to trap your rook. So knight d4, very important. Yes, he plays it, and the point is, after king d6, you take, give a check, and win this rook on a7. Magnus plays king d6, and Aditya must take the bishop, because otherwise his rook is trapped. What else? If you play rook b5, that's also possible, but then the rook will move away. He takes on c6, fantastic. Is he moving close to a draw now? Because after knight takes c6, there's knight b5 check, and he can pick up, yes, he can pick up the rook now on a7. That ensuing endgame after king e5 is a little bit complex, but white should be able to hold. Like for example, king e5 here by Magnus, and now knight a7, knight a7. This should be holdable for white. So Aditya has 1 minute left on the clock. It is move number 37. But he's thinking, Aditya, what are you thinking? Just take the rook. But Aditya seems to be a little confused here. No, plays bishop d5. Is it because he thought that endgame was lost? Or is he thinking that this is winning now? But this is a blunder, and you can see Magnus Carlsen knows that this is good for him. He goes rook a6 first, defends the knight, and Aditya's plan was knight takes c7. And if rook b6, he wanted to go knight a8 here. And if rook a6, he wanted to come back knight c7 and keep attacking the rook all the time and draw the game. But you can see there Magnus taking his time and going rook a5, and this would come as a massive shock to Aditya, who's down to a minute. And this is the 40th move, and he's blundered because bishop takes c6 is met with rook c5, and you lose a piece. And Magnus spots it, and that was a lucky breakthrough there for Magnus because, well, luck is a word that is loosely thrown around. Magnus did put Aditya under a lot of pressure, time pressure for the last 10-12 moves, and that's the reason why Aditya blundered there, and Magnus is now winning the game. He's exchange up, his king is well placed, and I think it shouldn't be too difficult for Magnus to convert it. Bishop b3 was the best move here, but he goes bishop c4, and you can sense that Aditya has, of course, is upset with what has happened because his position was so good. Rook a4. Now the bishop moves back, but you're going to lose another pawn. Rook takes e4 is hanging. So he takes rook e4, king d3, and Magnus is winning. What a game this was. Of course, Magnus was pushing throughout, but then in the end, Aditya had a great chance to hold the game to a draw, but he blundered on move number 37 with very little time. Knight comes to d5, blocking the bishop's path, and I think it's time to call it a day because the knight is hanging, rook e3 is coming, knight f4 is coming. Many problems lie in the position, and so Aditya sits there thinking. Magnus gets up from the chair, and when he comes back, Aditya offers his hand in resignation, and with this, Magnus moves to 4.5 out of 6, still in contention for winning the Qatar Masters, and he is playing with so many young Indian talents. I believe Aditya will now analyze with Magnus, and I leave it for you to listen to them.